We are back from the sand dunes, and Grant, it's been a really awesome day so far. So we've got to see the kangaroos jumping past your driveway.
Yep.
And we went down to the sand dunes and we got to see the ocean and have a bit of a walk in the sand. And we noticed some really ancient artifacts there from some of the old Aboriginal tribes.
Middens, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Tell me a little bit about that.
so the Aboriginal Middens are from the Tatungalang tribe. This is the local tribe that lived here for the last 20,000 or longer years, and so the Middens are sacred sites that are all along the 90 Mile Beach, and that we've actually, as part of an environmental group that we created, had some of the local Aboriginals come down and take us through and give us a full experience of that. It was an absolutely amazing, precious experience to connect with the tribe that was the original caretakers of this land.
Wow.
I really honour that.
Oh, that was really cool to be down there and just to sort of be in a place where you can imagine that thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago there was some people there, living and doing the things that they did every day to get through their lives. And it just seems like a really amazing sort of place to come from.
And these Indigenous people had incredible insights into the heart and gut, and I've looked at there's actually an Australian researcher, linguistics researcher, who's been researching the nature of the linguistics of the expression of heart and gut for the Australian Aboriginals.
Wow.
Yeah, so I actually hope to interview her. She's flat out doing her research at the moment, but I've spoken to her and I hope to get her interviewed on our Interviews with Remarkable Brains series. So
right, okay.
There's some really interesting stuff that goes on in the neurolinguistics and how they represent things at the gut level in their culture, and is different to Western representation.
Yeah.
But it matches a lot of their other cultural artifacts, or a lot of their ways of expressing themselves in the world, their ways of being. So it's a fascinating thing, and when you do go down to somewhere like that, those dunes wouldn't have changed. We were walking in a landscape that truly hasn't changed in the last 50,000 years.
Yeah.
So it's really like stepping back in time.
Yeah, it's really amazing, and it's interesting you talking about the neurolinguistics of the gut brain. Chapter 4 is about communication and communicating with our brains, with our multiple brains. And when I sort of first began to read chapter 4, it was kind of like, well, okay, so I'm going to have a conversation with my brains. What am I going to say? Yeah, g'day, how you going, brain? What's going on?
Gurgle.
Yeah. So I know it seems a little bit simplistic the way I'm going about it, but I imagine that there are different ways you can communicate with the brain, with our multiple brains, and also there are different ways that our brains communicate. So each one of them has a different way of communicating and giving us information, right?
Yeah.
So give us a little bit of insight into how we can go about communicating with our brains, and what is it that we might be missing in the form of a conversation, perhaps when we're getting information but we're not actually paying attention. Why is it sometimes also that we miss out on serious amounts of information that come from our multiple brains?
Yeah, it's a really important question and distinction. So if you look at, from behavioural modelling perspective, if you look at what a lot of the esoteric traditions say, they talk about that our intuitions, our deeper knowing, our embodied knowing, it comes into conscious awareness as what they call a small, quiet voice within. So it doesn't come in the form of language like the normal monkey brain language, normal, conscious awareness, ego-based language that you hear in your head when you have internal dialogues. If you start to listen to the sorts of voices you hear internally, then you start to notice there are different voices.
Right.
And so one of the voices will be a heart voice, one of the voices will be a gut voice. And they speak differently to the head-based. So the head-based voice is very much imbued in left hemisphere, processing of Broca and Wernicke's areas, and that language and internal dialogue as you're speaking to yourself and getting information from left and right hemisphere translated through. when you ask your heart or your gut to speak to you, when you ask for some wisdom or some information at the heart level or the gut level about that brain's domains of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
No point asking the gut about something it's not got prime functions or core competencies in.
Right.
You're not going to get wise information from that neural network. It'd be like going on the internet, going to the weather site and asking for a good recipe for chocolate cake. Right? The weather site has got a server that's optimized for weather information. You want chocolate cake recipes, go to the recipe sites.
Go to Nigella Lawson.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're telling me she's got no idea about weather?
Whether or not she knows the weather, I don't know. But maybe she looks outside. But I guarantee you, unless she's studied climatology, etc., she's not going to know about the weather.
Right.
So it's the same with your gut. So the thing is that these neural networks, there's no language centres in the heart or language centres in the gut in terms of auditory digital language, the sorts of words that we use up in the head brain. What these neural networks communicate in is their own neural codes, which in order for those codes to be converted to conscious awareness will largely be then converted through processes in which you consciously become aware of communication in your head brain. So the information will be transferred up through the autonomic nervous system and somatic channels up into, and by the way, as you know, majority of the nerves travel upwards. Something like 80-85% of the nerves are what's called afferent to the head brain. Not efferent. Efferent goes down out of the head brain, afferent goes up to the head brain. So the sensory nerves that go up to the head brain, the majority of those signals go up. Which is why largely, if the time you go to do a public speaking and you're doing the first few and you got those butterflies in your tummy, have you ever tried to tell your stomach, your butterflies to settle? Yeah, you have, and does it work?
No.
You can try and talk with your head brain to your gut brain all you like.
Yeah.
And it's largely going like, the young teenage kid going, your lips are moving, but I'm hearing la 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 la, right? So the gut brain, the majority of the signals go upwards, which is why the gut, when it gets itself in, and from an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. The gut brain evolved first, embryologically, it makes sense. The gut brain grows first, develops first, and the majority of the nerves then travel up to the head brain. So if the gut's upset, and if your gut is upset for whatever reason, even if it's like you've just eaten a bad piece of fish,
right,
and you're in the middle of gut cramps, have you ever tried to think clearly at that point in time?
Yeah, well, when you're gonna
I've tried.
stomach,
you can't forget it. If your stomach's upset,
it's all about the stomach.
You cannot think clearly. It's like your head's in a fog.
Yeah.
When the gut is awry, the head is out to lunch, so to speak. So the majority of these signals go up and they impact the head, and they're trying to saying there's something wrong with our organism, and your head brain just has to do whatever it can to try and help the gut at that point in time.
Yeah.
Forget trying to do mathematics or higher logic or
Right.
deep philosophy when your gut just needs you to.
When you need to go to the toilet.
Yeah, for example, when you seriously need a good shit, right? So if you ask your heart and gut brain for information, the language you've asked in will be translated inside your head brain into the insular and anterior cingulate cortex, those areas that are the sensorimotor maps, the representational areas in the head brain, in the deeper areas of the head brain. They'll be translated down into neural codes that make sense to the heart and gut brain.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these ways of communicating through these bridges that we're talking about, Dan, I hope you could hear, with all the waves in the background down in the ocean. But we have these points of overlap between the central nervous system and the enteric nervous system, the cardiac nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system. They're bridges or gateways. They're points where they're co-innovated between, the head brain and the gut brain, for example.
Right.
The diaphragm is one of them. The diaphragm is two muscles from an evolutionary perspective. In humans, you can't see it as two muscles easily, but in frogs, you can see it very clearly that they're two muscles. But in the humans, they are, but these muscles are sort of all intertwined now. One muscle group is innervated from the enteric nervous system. One muscle group is innervated from the somatic nervous system. So when you're breathing, you can take conscious control of breathing. Right? But if you don't, the autonomic nervous system will breathe for you. But if you need to, for whatever reason, you've eaten that bad piece of fish and your gut brain goes, I've got to throw this piece of fish up. It does not want you breathing in while it throws up, while it does reverse peristalsis, while it...
Right, yeah.
emits this bad fish.
Right.
So at that point in time, the enteric nervous system doesn't want to send a signal up to the head brain and then wait for the signal to come back down to the diaphragm. From an evolutionary perspective, the gut brain needs to go, stop breathing right now, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to reverse peristalsis. So that's why we have this co-innovation, and that means that this is a gateway. So if you consciously control your breathing to breathe calmly and rhythmically, with an even in and out breath, it sends very clear physical messages, because the motor and sensory nerves from the enteric nervous system to this muscle, when the muscle is being moved by the somatic system evenly and calmly, it sends a clear message to those nerves, to the enteric nervous system, going, everything's okay, everything's calm and clear, relax, it's all good.
Right.
There's nothing, oh my God, there's none of that needed, or, oh, I'm so depressed right now, there's none of that needed. But equally, if you breathe, so down at the moment, those breathing patterns, shifting the diaphragm, co-innovated, sending very clear message to the gut brain, things are not good, things are a bit down, things are a bit depressed. So there are ways in which signals from the head brain get communicated down into the gut brain, down into the heart brain, and equally back up. Signals coming from the heart and gut brain are what's called, Professor Eugene Gendlin, in his work on focusing, calls it the felt sense. You have this felt sense. But the felt sense can be translated into words. That's when his work of focusing, that's what you do. You take the felt sense and you ask what words are represented. And the head brain does its best attempt to translate these neural signals, these neural codes from the heart and gut brain, into something the head brain can make sense of. And it usually comes out in a small, quiet voice. When they say a small, quiet voice, what they're saying is the tonalities in the voice is different. It comes from a different location in your head brain.
Right.
And it's small, quiet voice because it talks in simple words. It uses simple phrasing. It's not, if you hear a big, long, complex sentence, that's your monkey brain, that's your head brain.
Right.
Right? That's your neocortex talking. If you hear a very simple, like a child speaking, that's potentially your heart or gut brain.
Right.
Right? And if it's speaking about emotions and things about how you connect with others, that's the heart brain. Speaking about fear and the prime functions of the gut brain, then that's likely to be the gut brain. And that's why if you notice, you start calibrating the prime functions of the internal dialogue, of your internal dialogue, you can start to notice, and if you track the tonalities and the location inside your mind space of where the voice is coming from against the prime functions, you start correlating and going, I learn, I can calibrate, I can self-calibrate, that's my heart speaking, that's my gut speaking, or that's my head brain speaking, etc. So equally when you're speaking to the heart and gut brain, you need to speak in simple words. You need to speak symbolically, metaphorically, and equally that's why a lot of wisdom and spiritual traditions will talk about that the messages that come from your deep intuition, these other souls, that these messages will often come in form of dreams. Remember the stuff about the heart brain transplants? Yes. They get a lot of dreams.
Yeah, from the last episode,
Symbols, metaphor, dreams, these are ways in which the messages, this felt sense, these inner signals, as Professor Damasio calls it, the somatic markers, the re-representation. This information is coming up and then being translated through the anterior cingulate cortex into the frontal lobe awareness via the language centres, via the visual centres, being translated into something that can have a bit more richer communication. And so dreams, symbols, imagery, small quiet voice, simple words, simple lyrical sentences, poetry. These are the ways the heart and gut speak to us. And the heart speaks in poetry.
Yeah, so I'm curious about that because is it possible that, so for me I found myself when I wasn't taking action on something that I love to do, that I used to get a really upset stomach. Is that a
That's another form of communication.
It is.
Yeah, so the felt sense, the sense in which the gut can communicate via all its mechanisms to communicate. So it can do it by gut motility, by rumbles, by farts, by needing to go to the toilet, by throwing up. If you have something that totally cuts across somebody's core identity, that really creates a threat at the level of their core identity, they'll literally throw up. It will be reverse peristalsis. The gut will go, I refuse to accept what's going on right now. If you try to, in some of the coaching work I've done, with people where the gut has decided it really just does not want to listen. You'll literally get people being stuck in the throat. One of these gateways, these co-innovation points.
Right.
The gut, its communication mechanism is to create a tensing up of the part of the esophagus. It will block. It will throw up. It will literally give you the shits.
Right.
Equally, it can come out in metaphorical language or metaphorical expression of behaviour. In animals, it's called scatological marking. Scat means poo or wee. So the animals mark their territory by weeing or pooing in the boundaries. They scat around the boundaries to say, this is my territory. We as semantic binding creatures, meaning binding creatures, we will semantically bind our territory. And if somebody comes and trespasses on your semantic territory, so for example, if you're the sales manager and somebody from manufacturing, the manufacturing or ops manager, starts to transgress onto your sales area, comes past your boundaries, you'll feel like they're
threatening me.
Threatening you. And at some sort of, they're into your semantic space.
Yeah.
And we'll start saying that this person's, Harry's giving me the shits.
Yes.
He's really giving me the shits. When we say that word shits as a communication of, it's a gut brain.
Right.
The shitting is an expression of the gut brain. It's a scatological marking.
It's like putting up boundaries.
He's putting up boundaries. They start to piss me off. And if he pisses me off anymore, I'm going to have to, metaphorically beat the shit out of him.
Right.
Now what do we say? Beat the shit out of somebody. And also, what do we use this scatological, communication that someone's pissing you off and you're going to beat the shit out of them and etc. Because it's literally a way of representing at a gut level. We're feeling like it's a threat and transgressed our core identity boundaries, our semantic space, and we literally will get to the point where people will start to have a physical fight. I've watched managers get to the point where they start arguing, yelling at each other, almost want to go outside. Come on, let's go and sort this out. And wow, children, can we grow up right now? But I understand what's happening is the gut brain's kicked in. The head brain is down-regulated. They've gone into some sort of fight or flight survival mode, right? Where it's about semantic survival, but it's gone beyond that because now it's about physical survival.
Right. It's pretty interesting to hear your point of view on that. One other thing, just before we wrap up as well, this episode, hopefully you can shed some light on, is you've spoken a number of times about dreams, and we've spoken the last episode at the sand dunes about the dreams from the heart, where you get somebody else's heart, and as a result of that, the person experiences memories and emotions and things that were going on for the donor in their heart, and then now that they have received that heart, they experience the emotions and the memories of the donor. So tell me about dreams that are gut-based. Does the gut dream? Is there?
And of course, the answer to this question is yes. So, as it turns out, as you know from having read mBraining and being both a coach and a trainer, so in my research, I came across. So there's from a behavioural modelling perspective, there's so much from spiritual and esoteric traditions talking about the power of dreams, and then you see the stuff from the heart donors, etc., about the power of dreams. There's also all of this stuff from people who have gut-based issues. So one of the ways in which I attempted to determine what are the core competencies was, and this harkens back from psychology, the early days of psychology, going back more than 100 years ago, before we had fMRIs, etc., so wonderful machines to peer inside people's head. Not to determine what was going on in their head, they would look at people who had deficits or damage to parts of the brain, and look at what behavioural shifts there were. So if somebody had damage to one part of the brain, and they'd say, well, look, if it's the left hemisphere, just around this region of the left hemisphere, that they lose the ability to speak, or they lose the ability to understand language, or articulate language. So they learn about things like Broca and Wernicke's area of language, right? So one of the paradigmatic examples is Phineas Gage, who had a tamping iron blown through his left frontal pole, so up through the left-hand side of his brain, and took out his left frontal lobe, and it caused massive disinhibition. And so the left frontal lobe is involved in inhibition, so in inhibiting behaviour. Just because you think something, you don't do it, because there are things going on in the left frontal lobe. Right frontal lobe does something different around inhibition and disinhibition, etc. So left and right hemispheres do different things, and different aspects of the brain. So with the heart and gut brain, I can't use fMRI. Functional MRI works because what they do is they actually look for what's called regional cerebral blood flow. They actually are not picking up neurons firing, they're picking up changes, microscopic changes in blood flow in small regions of the brain, voxels. So in these little volume voxels, they call them areas of the brain, they can see regional cerebral blood flow, and the cerebral blood flow changes because when neurons are firing more often, they need more blood, right?
Right.
In that region. So they pick up neuron firing from blood flow, and they infer neuron firing or brain activity from blood flow.
Right.
Now, in the heart is a pump of blood. It has got, gallons of blood going through there on a minute-by-minute basis. Right. There's no way from the little bits of neuronal firing of the neuron, the brain in the heart that's entwined around the heart and through the heart. There's no way that you can actually pick up neurons firing when there's gallons of blood coursing through there, on a beat-by-beat basis. So you can't stick a heart brain in a fMRI, a functional MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, and see neuron firing from, it's just swamped, signal to noise, there's be swamped. Right. The gut, the same, it's got, all of that incredible amount of vasculature, of blood flow, to have to pick up the nutrients that go out to the microvilli and the nutrients going in, through the bloodstream. So impossible, given that the neural network of the enteric nervous system is entwined in the walls of the gastrointestinal tract and throughout the whole, there with all the blood flow there, it's impossible to pick that up. So what I decided to do was do what psychology had done and go, let me look for deficits. What happens if somebody has a disease of the gut? What happens if somebody has some sort of damage or an operation or etc.? So that's what made me look for the heart-lung transplant stuff. What happens if people have open heart surgery? Are there shifts in personality or behaviour, in emotional experience after open heart surgery, after someone has a heart attack, etc.? And for the gut, it was, what happens for people who've got celiac disease, inflammatory bowel disorder, irritable bowel syndrome, etc.? There's, Crohn's disease. There's all of these gut-based disorders, and people with these challenges at the gut level have times when they've got active phase versus passive phase. So in an active phase versus a passive phase, when the disease is active, are there shifts in behaviour, personality, emotion, etc.? And that was just one of the ways. That would be one source of evidence. I talk about divergent sources of evidence, and then looking for what is the convergent common factors to all this divergent. If I look at all of this, from neuroscience to this, behavioural deficits from disease or damage, etc. So one of the things you see in, speaking back to dreams, long way to answer your question, sorry about this, I keep these things relatively short, but sometimes there are long answers to short questions. So people with IBD report that during active phases have much more intense dreams.
Irritable bowel syndrome.
Yeah, well, no, IBS is the same. IBS people, but IBD is inflammatory bowel disorder.
Right.
And it's things like Crohn's, etc. It's largely an autoimmune disorder or disordering. There's a class of different things that lead to IBD. So people with IBD, when they're in active phase, report much more intense dreams, and that's fascinating. So I started looking at, had anyone done any research on this, and what they've actually done is, if you want to look at brain waves, actual electrical firings of the brain, you hook someone up to an electroencephalograph, an EEG. Well, you can actually hook somebody up to an EGG, which is called an electrogustogram, right? And measure the firings of the electrical signals which are coming from the neural network of the enteric nervous system, the gut brain. And what they found is that yes, people with IBD, and let's say Crohn's, during an active phase have much more intense firing when they're sleeping. When they report that they wake up saying, I just had an intense dream, it turns out the gut was firing off hugely at that time while they were reporting dreams that are largely symbolic of gut and gut issues, and the sorts of things that we found in the common factor analysis of gut core competencies. Right. So it actually turns out from that research that when the head brain goes through rapid eye movement sleep, so
REM sleep,
REM, rapid eye movement sleep, approximately every 90 minutes, the majority of people go through a period of REM sleep. That's largely when people do their dreaming. if you wake them up in the middle of REM sleep, and that REM means rapid eye movement, that people's eyes, if you look, their eyes behind their eyelids are moving. Even in dogs you see this, and cats, if they're sleeping, you see their eyes, and their legs will twitch, and you see, and they're dreaming, right? They're going through a dream. So it turns out that the gut, approximately every 90 minutes, goes through what's called RGM sleep, or rapid gut movement sleep. That while you're sleeping, every 90 minutes your gut goes through this little twitchy bits that are going on, and the highest quality sleep, because when rapid gut movement and rapid eye movement sleep, when the gut and head are going through the same dreaming period at the same time. And so the researchers believe that what's happening is there's some form of communication going on between gut and head, and that's why people with inflammatory bowel disorder who've got really serious issues from an autoimmune perspective at the gut level. Their gut is attacking itself, attacking the person. That they're going through some really serious stuff that's messages going from the gut to head that is then coming out in the dream. So it's an example of the fact that what's going on at the gut level is represented in dreams in the head, and it's I believe a way. And when you look at some of the classes of dreams where people have got intuitive messages that save their lives. Oprah has some stories she went looking at all this gut intuition, gut wisdom. Some amazing stories of people's lives were saved from their dreams. They got information in their dreams that was really important and saved their lives. So it's not surprising then if the gut is communicating and the heart are communicating with the head during this time of sleep and dreaming. It's just why spiritual and esoteric traditions put such focus on dreams. And you can interpret dreams from an MBIT perspective in ways where you look at prime functions and the symbolism as representative of the prime functions. The dreams start to make a symbolic sense that they don't with a lot of other dream interpretation. So it's very important, very powerful. In a sense, what's happening when you sleep and dream is your gut and head. Your gut is a remember Damasio's work, re-representation, somatic marker. What you're doing is your gut's trying to digest the information of the day. It's trying to help you make sense from a gut perspective to digest your day from the core competencies of really taking something on at a core self level or not, of whether or not it represents a threat or not, and whether it's something you need to get moving on, motility, take action on. And the heart is trying to tell you about the relational affect in response to this, about the values and what's important, and about emotions. And the head is trying to make meaning, cognitive meaning out, cognitive perceptions out of it, etc. And what's the logic of it. And between the dance of these multiple brains during sleep and dreaming period, you recapitulate your day and try to learn and make sense from it, and do repair and restoration work. There's another thing that occurs during sleeping and dreaming. So,
Wow.
Important question, really powerful stuff.
Yeah,
from a coaching perspective, from a leadership perspective, from a spiritual perspective, really key things to be able to tap into the communication of your three brains, understand what they're doing, understand when different things are, that was just, I ate a bad piece of fish. No, that's a really important message from my gut telling me something's not right in my life right now.
Right. So, just before we really wrap up this time, what popped into my head was, the thought that came into my head was, if we've eaten a bad piece of fish, we can't concentrate, and we can't make decisions, etc. And that's temporary, right? If you've got one of these stomach conditions that are permanent, that's affecting your life at such a massive level on a daily basis, on an ongoing basis. And not only that, it seems as though we can do a fair amount of healing of ourselves through what we eat. So I imagine if we eat some junk food regularly, and we get stuck in habits of bad consumption of processed and sort of terrible foods, I imagine that would also potentially minimize the conversation that could be happening from a gut level, and the messages could be getting missed because the conversation is just not occurring, and as a result cause us to miss some really important threat situations in our life, or action taking situations in our life, and it seems to play a massive role in a lot of different parts of our life.
Spot on. And when we come back to the next session, I know you'll be asking me questions about the next chapter, which is all about neural integrative engagements and how you engage the three brains. And let's revisit that, because spot on what you said there. There's some really important distinctions around what you need to do in your own life to begin to really hear these messages and not miss out on them. And somebody's going to be around food, It's going to be around what you do for, at a heart and gut level.
Yeah.
It's definitely. And let's talk then about, because we've got to start introducing the notions of neuroplasticity.
Right.
All right. So in the next episode, let's bring all that together, because it's a really important point you're making.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to neuroplasticity talk, because that is one of my favourite topics, as you know. So we are here in Locksport, and it's starting to go dark now. So we've spent a fair amount of the day outside, and in a little while we're going to be bringing you the next episode from a different location. Grant, thanks so much again for today, for taking me down to the beach, for seeing the sand dunes, and for getting a little bit of an insight into how the Aboriginal people lived in the area. We hope you like this episode, and we look forward to chatting with you guys again very soon. Bye.
Thank you.